The Veloci Empire had conquered 17 star systems. They moved from planet to planet like hungry insects, taking everything they wanted. Minerals, water, plants, animals, and sometimes even the people who lived there. No one had ever stopped them. Their ships were too strong. Their weapons were too powerful. Their shields could stop any attack. Earth was supposed to be easy, just another small planet on the edge of the galaxy. The humans who lived there had only traveled to their moon a few times. They had no real space fleet, no planetary shields, nothing that could hurt the Veloci. Fleet Commander Torek stood on his ship, the Eternal Consumption, and watched 300 harvester vessels fly down through Earth's clouds. The humans had tried to talk first. Then they had tried to threaten. Then they had fired nuclear weapons. The bombs had exploded against Veloci shields like raindrops against glass. Torek had 4 eyes, and all of them showed contempt. These humans were weak. This would be finished in days. On the surface of Earth, in a city called Busan, on the coast of Korea, a young woman named Park Yuna watched the alien ships fill the sky. She was a physicist, a scientist who studied the laws of the universe. But nothing in her books had prepared her for this. The sky had turned dark with metal. The sound of alien engines was like thunder that never stopped. She held her grandmother's hand tightly. Her grandmother, Park Sunja, was 87 years old. Her hair was white as snow, and her back was bent with age. But her eyes were strange today. She did not look afraid. She looked like she was remembering something. A harvester beam hit a building nearby. The building did not explode. It simply came apart. Steel and concrete and glass floated upward into the alien ship like dust being sucked into a vacuum cleaner. People screamed and ran. Yuna pulled her grandmother toward the shelter, but Sunja stopped walking. She stared at the sky with that strange look. "They have come again," the old woman said. Yuna did not understand. "Grandmother, we have to go, please. Sky devourers. They came before." Long, long before, Sunja's grip on Yuna's hand became very strong. Too strong for such an old woman. But they do not remember what sleeps under our feet. Yuna wanted to ask what she meant, but there was no time. She pulled her grandmother into the shelter with the other refugees. Outside, the world was ending. Across the planet, the Veloci began their work. They did not care about the cities or the people. They wanted what was under the ground. Their sensors had found rich deposits of rare minerals deep in the earth, metals that were worth more than entire planets. This primitive world was actually a treasure. The drills came down. Massive machines that could cut through solid rock like a knife through butter. They landed in the deepest parts of the ocean, in the frozen lands of Siberia, in the empty deserts of Africa, and in the ancient mountains of Korea, in Seoul. The capital city of South Korea, a young soldier named Kim Do-eun was trying to help people escape. He was a lieutenant in the army, but there was no army anymore. Not really. Their tanks and planes had been destroyed in the first hour. All he could do now was guide civilians to the underground shelters. Then the ground began to shake. At first, Do-eun thought it was another alien machine, but this was different. The alien machines made a high, constant vibration. This was deeper, slower. It felt like a heartbeat. Like the earth itself was waking up. His radio crackled. A panicked voice came through. "This is Station 7 near Junju. Something is wrong with the drill. The ground is moving. Not shaking, moving, like something is pushing up from below. We need." The radio went silent. Do-eun looked toward the east. Toward the ancient city of Yongju, where Korean kings had ruled thousands of years ago. The sky in that direction was starting to glow. Not with fire. With something else. Something that looked almost like starlight coming from the ground. On the Eternal Consumption, an alarm began to sound. A young Veloci analyst stared at his screens with growing fear. "Commander," he said, "we are detecting thermal signatures. Very large thermal signatures." Torek turned to look. "Volcanic activity? This planet has volcanoes." "No, sir." The analyst's voice was shaking now. "The signatures they are moving. Rising from multiple points across the planet. They are not volcanoes. They are not machines. Sir, I do not know what they are. Torek pushed the analyst aside and looked at the screen himself. Red dots were appearing all over the planet, under the mountains of Korea, under the ocean near Japan, under the ice of the north, under the oldest mountains in the world, and they were all rising toward the surface. It's impossible, Torek whispered. In the refugee shelter in Busan Park, Sunja closed her eyes and smiled. Tears ran down her wrinkled face, but they were not tears of sadness. Yuna, she said softly. Do you remember the stories I told you when you were small? About the dragons and the tigers? About the gods who lived in the mountains and the seas? Yuna nodded. She had thought they were just fairy tales. Just old stories that grandmothers told the children. Were not stories, Sunja said. They were memories. Our people have always known. We just forgot how to believe. The ground shook again, harder this time. And from somewhere far away, somewhere deep under the mountains, there came a sound. It was not like anything Yuna had ever heard. It was like a horn being blown, but made of thunder and wind and the grinding of stone. It was the sound of something ancient, something powerful, something that had been sleeping for a very, very long time, and now it was awake. Outside the shelter, the Veloci harvester ships continued their work, unaware that they had made a terrible mistake. They had come to take Earth's treasures. They had drilled into the planet's heart, and they had woken the Guardians. Deep under the mountains of Jirasin, in caves that existed before humans had words, ancient eyes opened for the first time in 12,000 years. The entity had many names. The Korean people called it Sansin, the mountain god. Others called it Yangwang, the Dragon King. But these names were just human attempts to describe something much older. Something that was born when the earth itself was young and covered in fire. Something that had watched the first fish crawl onto land. Something that had seen the dinosaurs rise and fall. It was a guardian. And it had been sleeping for a very long time, but now metal machines were drilling into the earth. Strange creatures from the stars were hurting the planet. And worst of all, the humans, the young species that the Guardians had protected since they first stood upright, were dying. The Guardian rose. On the small island of Alundo, a geologist named Bae Hanyul was trapped. She had been studying rocks in an underground research station when the aliens came. The station had collapsed around her. Her leg was broken. Her flashlight was dying. The air was getting thin. She was going to die here, alone in the dark. Then the walls began to change, not collapse. Change. The solid rock flowed like water. Moving aside to create a tunnel, Hanyul watched with wide eyes as stone that should have been hard as steel bent and shifted like soft clay. A light appeared in the new tunnel. It was not flashlight light. It was not fire. It was something else. Something that glowed like a star. The thing that walked toward her was shaped almost like a human. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. But it was made of living rock and flowing magma. Its skin was granite. Its veins pulsed with orange fire, and its eyes were like 2 small suns. Hanyul should have been afraid. She should have screamed. But somehow, looking at this impossible creature, she felt only peace. A voice spoke directly into her mind, not through her ears, into her thoughts. Child of Earth, your kind face is death. Do you wish us to help? Hanyul's broken leg was sending waves of pain through her body. Her lungs were burning from the thin air, but she managed to speak. Please, she whispered, help us. The creature's starlight eyes seemed to soften. Then watch, and remember. The Guardian rose straight up through the solid rock, passing through stone as if it was not there. It erupted from the mountainside like a volcano being born. Across the planet, similar things were happening. From the peak of Baekdu Mountain, the highest mountain in Korea, something emerged. It was a dragon, but not like any dragon from movies or books. It was made of crystalline ice, and it was enormous. Its body stretched across the sky for kilometers. Its scales caught the sunlight and broke it into 1,000 rainbows. This was Cheonrong, the azure dragon of legend. From the depths of the ocean near Jeju Island, something else surfaced. It was a turtle, but the size of an island. Its shell was black obsidian covered with coral and barnacles as big as houses. Ancient seaweed hung from its massive flippers. This was Hyanmu, the black tortoise. From the peaks of the Taebaek Mountains, a tiger leaped into the sky. Its fur was silver and white, and it left trails of starlight behind it as it moved. It was as big as a passenger airplane, and its roar shook the clouds. This was Baiko, the white tiger, and from the volcanic islands of the south, a bird took flight. It was made of fire and gold, and its wingspan covered the sun. Its cry was like music and thunder combined. This was Jujak, the vermilion bird, the four guardians, the four protectors. They had been sleeping for 12,000 years, waiting to see if humanity would need them again. Now they were awake. The Veloci harvester ships had faced many enemies before: rebel armies, planetary defense systems, nuclear weapons. They had always won. They had never faced this. A harvester ship near Sol detected Baiko, the white tiger, approaching at impossible speed. The ship's captain ordered all weapons to fire: plasma cannons, kinetic rounds, particle beams, everything. Every shot hit the tiger. None of them did anything. The energy splashed off its silver fur like water off a duck. The kinetic rounds bounced away like rubber balls. The particle beams simply disappeared. Baiko did not slow down. It hit the harvester ship at full speed. The ship was 3 kilometers long. It was made of the strongest metal the Veloci had. It had shields that could stop asteroid impacts. It crumpled like paper in the refugee shelter in Busan. Park Yuna watched through a small window as Cheon Ryong, the azure dragon, descended from the sky. The dragon's crystal body was beautiful and terrifying. Its eyes were older than mountains. A Veloci harvester ship tried to flee. The dragon opened its mouth. What came out was not fire. It was something colder, something that froze the ship solid in an instant. Then the dragon's tail swept through the frozen ship, and it shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. Yuna could not speak, could not think, could only watch. Her grandmother stood beside her, that strange smile still on her old face. The old stories, Sunja said softly. They were always true. We just forgot. On the eternal consumption, Commander Torek watched his fleet die. Ship after ship was being torn apart, crushed, frozen, burned. The creatures attacking them did not seem to be using technology. They seemed to be the weapons, living weapons of a kind Torek had never imagined. What are these things? He screamed at his officers. His science officer's voice was barely a whisper. Unknown, Commander, but the energy readings... They are older than our oldest records. Older than our species. These things, they may be older than our sun. Torek watched another of his ships explode, then another, then 3 more. For the first time in his long military career, Fleet Commander Turek felt real fear, and the Guardians were just getting started. The battle lasted 3 days. If it could even be called a battle, Captain Shin Tai-Wu stood on the deck of his ship, a destroyer named Sejong the Great, and watched the end of an alien invasion. His ship had survived only because it had been far from the fighting when the aliens came. Now he and his crew could only watch. Hyanmu, the black tortoise, surfaced next to his ship. The Guardian was so big that it made the destroyer look like a toy boat next to an island. Tai-Wu expected to feel afraid. Instead, he felt something strange. Safe. Protected. The tortoise did not attack the human ship. Instead, it created gentle currents in the water that pushed the destroyer away from the danger zones. It was protecting them. Above, the sky was filled with fire and light. Qianrian, the azure dragon, was hunting the Veloci ships like a cat hunting mice. The alien vessels tried to run, but the dragon was faster. They tried to fight, but nothing they had could hurt it. One by one, they fell from the sky. Baiko, the white tiger, caught a group of alien ships trying to hide behind the moon. It crossed the distance between Earth and the moon in seconds. Impossible speed. The ships never had a chance. Jujak, the vermilion bird, burned the Velocity drilling machines where they stood. The massive drills that had been cutting into the earth melted like candles. The bird's fire was not normal fire. It burned alien metal, but left human buildings standing. It destroyed the invaders, but did not hurt the invaded. By the second day, the Veloci had stopped trying to fight. They were only trying to run. A Veloci assault carrier tried to crash into Seoul. The ship was damaged and falling. But its captain chose to aim for the city. If he was going to die, he would take millions of humans with him. Biko appeared in front of the falling ship. The tiger moved so fast that it seemed to teleport. Its massive silver body hit the carrier and tore through it like the ship was made of paper. The pieces fell into the ocean, far from any human city. By the third day, it was over. Of the 300 ships that had come to harvest Earth, only 47 survived. They clustered together in high orbit around the eternal consumption, like frightened children hiding behind their parent. Commander Torek stood in his command center, unable to believe what he was seeing. Then a voice spoke in his mind. It was not loud. It was not angry. It was calm and patient, like a teacher speaking to a child. But it carried a weight that made Torek's bones tremble. You have hurt this world. The children of Earth are under our protection. Leave now. Go back to your empire. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that this planet is forbidden. Return, and we will find your homeworld. We are patient. We are eternal, and we do not forgive twice. Torek had conquered 17 star systems. He had ordered the death of billions. He had destroyed 3 entire species because they refused to surrender. He had never been afraid of anything. He was afraid now. Full retreat, he ordered. His voice cracked. Maximum speed. Now, the Veloci fleet ran. They activated their fastest engines and fled toward the edge of the solar system. They did not stop to collect survivors. They did not send any last attacks. They simply ran as fast as they could go. On Earth, people came out of their shelters. They looked up at the sky that had been full of alien ships just hours ago. Now, it was empty. Clean, safe, and above them, the 4 guardians gathered. Chien Ryong, Biko, Hyanmu, and Jujak flew in great circles over the Korean peninsula. They were so big that they covered the sky. Millions of people watched them. Some cried, some cheered, some fell to their knees and prayed. The guardian from the mountain Sanzin descended from the sky and landed gently on the ground. It had taken a smaller form, only 3 meters tall. It stood before a group of world leaders who had been brought. Together in an emergency meeting, the Secretary General of the United Nations, a woman named Choi Minji, stepped forward. Her legs were shaking, but she forced herself to stand straight. "What are you?" she asked. The guardian's voice filled the air. Somehow everyone could hear it, no matter how far away they were. It was like the voice came from the earth and the sky and the air itself. We are the memory of Earth. We are its first children. When this world was young and covered in fire, we were born from its heart. When your ancestors lived in caves and feared the dark, we watched over them. We kept them safe from dangers they could not understand. When they grew strong enough to stand alone, we slept. We hoped they would never need us again. Minji swallowed hard. And now? The guardian's starlight eyes seemed almost sad. Now we have seen that you are not alone among the stars, and that the stars are full of danger. So we will sleep no longer. We will stand with you. In a refugee shelter in Busan, Park Yuna held her grandmother as the old woman wept. These were tears of joy, tears of relief, tears of a faith that had finally been proven true. I always believed, Sunja whispered. Even when everyone said the stories were just myths, I always believed they were real. Yuna hugged her grandmother tighter. I believe now, too. Outside, the guardians watched over their children. They had slept for 12,000 years. They would not sleep again. Earth was no longer undefended. 3 months after the Veloci ran away, the whole galaxy was talking about Earth. On the Veloci homeworld, the High Council met for the first time in 200 years. These were the most powerful leaders of an empire that stretched across 17 star systems. They had never needed to meet like this before. There had never been a problem they could not solve. Commander Torek stood before them. He was no longer a commander. He had been stripped of his rank and his honors. But they needed to hear what he had seen. "You are telling us," said the eldest counselor, "that a primitive planet has living gods, creatures that can destroy our ships with their bare hands." "I am telling you," Torek replied, "that Earth is not what we thought. We were lucky that anyone survived to warn you." The council argued for days. Some wanted to send a bigger fleet. Some wanted to use planet-killing weapons. But in the end, they did nothing. Because they had seen Torek's recordings. They had seen the dragon freeze a warship solid. They had seen the tiger tear through metal like cloth. They had seen weapons that could crack moons bounce harmlessly off silver fur, for the first time in 800 years. The Velocity Empire was afraid, and word spread. The Velocity had terrorized the galaxy. Species across hundreds of worlds had suffered under their harvester fleets. Now, those same species heard whispers about a small blue planet that had broken the unbreakable empire. Earth became famous overnight. On Earth itself, everything was changing. Dr. Bae Hanyul became the first human ambassador to the Guardians. Her experience in the cave being saved by Sanson had given her a connection to these ancient beings that no one else had. She spent her days learning about them, talking to them, trying to understand creatures that had been alive since before the dinosaurs. She discovered that the Guardians could speak any human language, but they preferred the oldest ones: Ancient Korean, Old Sumerian, Aboriginal languages that carried echoes of humanity's earliest days. It was like the Guardians remembered a time when those languages were new. Lieutenant Kim Doan was promoted to colonel. His new job was impossible: figure out how to work with beings of living stone and starfire. The Guardians were not soldiers. They did not follow orders. They did not fit into any military structure, but they wanted to help. And they were surprisingly curious about their young siblings. One day, Colonel Doan was giving a briefing when Qian Ryong, the Azure Dragon, appeared. The dragon had made itself smaller, only 50 meters long. Instead of kilometers, so it could fit near the military base. Its voice was like wind blowing through ancient pine trees. "You have grown clever," the dragon said. "When we went to sleep, your people could barely make bronze tools. Now, you touch the stars. We are ... impressed." Doan bowed respectfully. "With all respect, we could not even scratch those alien ships." The dragon made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You resisted. You protected your children and your elders. You did not give up, even when there was no hope." The dragon's ancient eyes sparkled. "That is why we woke. Not because of your strength, because of your spirit. That has not changed since we first watched you learn to walk on two legs." Park Yuna returned to her work as a physicist, but now her work was completely different. She studied the Guardians, trying to understand how they could exist. They broke every law of physics she knew. They could pass through solid rock. They could move faster than light. They existed partly outside of normal space and time. Her papers on what she called primordial entity physics would change human science forever. But she never forgot what her grandmother had said. The old woman's words echoed in her mind constantly. They came before. Long before, Yuna began researching ancient myths. Not just Korean myths, myths from every culture in the world. And she found something amazing. Every human civilization had stories about great beings that protected humanity. Dragons in Asia, giants in Europe, thunderbirds in America, spirits of the mountain and the sea everywhere. The stories were different, but the core was the same. Ancient, powerful creatures that watched over humans in their earliest days. The Guardians confirmed it. They had been everywhere. When humanity was spread across the world in small, scattered tribes, the Guardians had watched over all of them. They had guided humans away from dangers they could not understand. They had quietly protected them for thousands of years. The asteroid that should have hit Earth 10,000 years ago, the Guardians had pushed it away. The supervolcano that should have erupted, the Guardians had calmed it. The ice ages that should have frozen the last safe places where early humans lived. The Guardians had kept those places warm. Humanity had never been alone. They had just been allowed to think they were, so they would grow strong and independent. 6 months after the invasion, a new ship appeared in Earth's solar system. It was not Velocity. It came from something called the Concord of Free Worlds, a group of species that had suffered under Veloci rule for centuries. Their message was simple. We want to talk. With the humans and with your guardians. For the first time, Earth would meet the galaxy, not as victims or prey. They would meet as equals, maybe even as saviors. The galaxy had pushed Earth. Earth had pushed back. And now nothing would ever be the same. The ambassador from the Concord of Free Worlds was a bird-like creature named Terrell. She belonged to a species called the Vashti, who had beautiful feathers and musical voices. The Veloci had destroyed their homeworld 300 years ago. Since then, the Vashti had lived on borrowed planets. Always afraid, always running. Now Terrell stood in a meeting room on Earth, looking at Secretary General Choi Minji with something like hope in her alien eyes. Your world has become legendary, Terrell said through her translator device. Species who had never heard of Earth now whisper your name. The Veloci had not lost a battle in 800 years, until they met you. Minji kept her face calm, but inside she was still struggling to accept everything that had happened. 3 months ago, she had been worried about climate treaties and trade agreements. Now she was talking to aliens about her planet's guardian gods. It would help, she said simply. Yes, your guardians. Terrell's feathers moved in a way that meant nervous excitement. Many in the Concord are wondering, are they weapons? Can they help us? Can they fight the Veloci on other worlds? A deep voice filled the room. Sanson, the mountain god, had been standing in the corner in his smaller form. Now he stepped forward. His body of stone and starlight made the room feel ancient just by being there. We are not weapons, Sanson said. We are protectors. Earth is our home. Humanity is our responsibility. We cannot leave this world. Terrell's feathers drooped. The disappointment was clear on her alien face. Then, you cannot help us. You cannot help the billions who still suffer under the Veloci. Sanson was quiet for a moment. Then his starlight eyes turned to Minji, and then to Colonel Kim Duin, who was standing guard nearby. We cannot leave, the Guardian said, but our children can. He paused. And perhaps we can teach them. Perhaps we can give them what they need to defend themselves among the stars. In the months that followed, Earth transformed. The Guardians could not simply give humans their technology. They did not have technology. They were part of the Earth itself, beings of living stone and eternal fire. But they could share ... Inspiration. Park Yuna discovered it first. Working near the Guardians made her brain work differently. Ideas came faster. Solutions to impossible problems appeared in her dreams. It was not mind control. It was more like spark. Like the Guardians' ancient minds were lighting fires in human brains that had always been there, waiting to burn. Human scientists made more progress in 6 months than they had in the previous 50 years. New metals that bent the laws of physics. New engines that could cross the solar system in hours instead of months. New weapons that could actually hurt Veloci ships. Dr. Bay Hanuel documented everything. She wrote books about Guardian-human interaction that would be studied for centuries. She learned that the Guardians had been doing this for a long time, quietly inspiring human progress, nudging human evolution, helping humanity grow without controlling them. The first Guardian-assisted spaceship was called the New Dawn. It launched 18 months after the invasion. Colonel Doan had helped design its weapon systems, with gentle guidance from Baiko, the White Tiger. The ship's hull was made of metals that the Guardians had blessed in ways human scientists still did not understand. Park Yuna stood on the observation deck as the New Dawn left Earth's orbit. Tears ran down her face. Happy tears. Her grandmother had died 3 months earlier. Sunja had passed peacefully in her sleep, with a smile on her face. She had lived long enough to see the Guardians return. She had lived long enough to see her fairy tales become real. "We are not alone anymore," Una whispered to the stars. "We never were." The Concord of Free Worlds welcomed humanity with open arms. Earth's reputation was already legendary. These were the people whose planet had gods. These were the people who had broken the Veloci Empire. Trade agreements were signed. Alliances were made. Species that had ignored Earth for centuries now wanted to be friends with humans. And the Veloci Empire. It collapsed within 5 years. Word of their defeat spread too far. Too many enslaved species heard about what happened at Earth. They found courage they had forgotten they had. Rebellions broke out across all 17 star systems. The harvester fleets were destroyed. The conquered worlds rose up. Everything that Veloci had built came crashing down. Commander Torek, in his final recorded message before rebels executed him, said only this: "We should have left that planet alone. We woke something that should have stayed sleeping. And now the galaxy will never be the same." He was right. Humanity spread across the stars. They built colonies on distant worlds. They made friends and allies among dozens of species. They became traders and diplomats and explorers, but they always remembered where they came from. They always knew that Earth was still protected. The Guardians never left. They took turns sleeping now, always keeping at least one awake. Always watching for new threats. In the official records of the galaxy, a new entry was added: Earth, homeworld of humanity. Status: forbidden. Protected by primordial entities of unknown origin and unlimited power. Do not approach. Do not threaten. Do not forget. Other species read this warning and wondered. What kind of planet had guardian gods? What kind of species was so loved that ancient beings would wake from eternal sleep to protect them? Humans knew the answer. The Guardians had told them, "We protected you because you were worth protecting. You are small. You are young. You live such short lives, but you love fiercely. You hope constantly. You never give up, even when giving up makes sense. That is why we chose you. That is why we will always choose you." Humanity was no longer a primitive species on the edge of the assert galaxy. They were the children of gods, and they were just getting started.